my name is Daryl, and I'm a veteran.
Hey, I'm Travis. I'm an Air Force veteran.
Hey, my name's Jonathan, and I'm a veteran.
Hi, my name's Ashley, and I'm a veteran.
My name is Chad, and I'm a veteran.
Well, good evening, everybody, and happy Sunday. My name is Carol Lee, and I'm the host of Conversations with a Vet. I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight, and we will get to my very gracious guest waiting in the wings here momentarily. But before we do, I did want to say a little bit about the 2 service members that were killed, and there is one that remains missing after an Iranian missile and drone attack in Jordan on Friday. And they were evacuated to Jordan, but there were 4 service members that were also medically evacuated to Jordan hospitals, but have been discharged, so thank goodness. And unfortunately, we don't know the names of those who were killed. However, please keep them and their families in your thoughts. On another note, we have a brand new book that has come to us, and he is going to be one of my upcoming guests as well. The book is called Unshaken Resolve, and that is by Michael Alexander Payne. Super excited to have him come on the show. If you haven't already, you can go and pick this book up at Amazon, and it is a great read. It is about leadership and a lot of leading with discipline, courage, integrity. So pick up your book today, Unshaken Resolve. Again, that's by Michael Alexander Payne. All right. Without further ado, please help me to introduce and welcome Tim Thomas. Good evening and good morning.
Yes, good morning from Monday in Australia.
It's really late for you, or early, I guess. It's early for you. It's a little later for me. And
yeah, no, this isn't studio lights. This is just the sun coming up.
Nice. That's very nice. I'm a little jealous because ours is starting to go down. So again, thank you very, very much for coming on. I always like to start the channel and the show by asking my guests to tell me a little bit about who you were as a child.
As a child, I had ADHD and dyslexia, but in the 70s, the technical term for that was the stupid kid that couldn't sit still.
I'm sorry. I'm from that era, so I got it. I understand.
Yeah. And they could belt you back then too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
And was school something that you enjoyed or not at all?
well, I just had this acceptance of, well, you have to do it. Everyone's doing it. You have to do it. I never questioned it, but I'm like, well, they keep on telling me I'm stupid. So if I can't figure all this stuff out, I may as well have as much fun as possible. So that's what I did. I was very disruptive in class and couldn't sit still. And as much as I was having fun, I did notice that when you tell a kid that he's stupid enough, he starts believing it. So it wasn't until I was in my sort of late teens and I'm doing these IQ tests and I'm doing pretty good, right? In fact, in some areas, I was in the top percentile.
Wow.
And then it's just this thought went through my head, you know, Tim, maybe you're not as stupid as everyone tells you. And then I just sort of went from there. I started sort of expanding on my own boundaries, not the boundaries other people had sort of impressed upon me when I was young.
Which makes sense. And were you in any sports as you got older?
Oh, sport was the only thing that made sense to me. So, moving my physical body became very natural to me. I was sort of in the sort of top tier of track and field. We played Australian rules football, which is physical like your American football, but we don't wear padding. And
okay.
yeah, so boxing was also another thing that was, made a lot of sense to me. And to be honest, I noticed early that when I moved my body, it's like somehow I became smarter, and I felt better about myself. So it just became this thing that I naturally gravitated to.
And what was it that made you decide that you wanted to join the military, or being in Australia, is that something that you're required to do?
Well, I initially tried to join when I was 19, but the recruiting process was so disorganized. I'm like, if this is what it's like trying to get in, what's it going to be like on the inside? So it wasn't until 2004 the Australian government did something they've never done before with the military, and that is direct recruiting into special forces.
Wow.
And two things: the maximum age was 30, and I was like 6 months away from being 30. And so I'm like, well, if I don't do it, would I regret not doing it? And then the other thing was, we recently had the Bali bombings, which was a terrorist bombing in Bali, where they blew up the Sari nightclub, and a mate of mine was in that. So I'm like, these guys aren't respecting boundaries. If they're allowed to be organized, they're just going to keep expanding. So I'd rather keep them disorganized, because I'm not stupid. There's no such thing as winning these kinds of things, but you can contain it to a certain space, right? And I thought, well, it's better to keep them unorganized in their own backyard than have them sort of cross the borders. So with that in mind, I in 2004 was the very first intake of this direct recruiting program.
Wow. And so you made it just by the skin of your teeth.
As far as age goes, yes. And everyone, you got to remember, everyone's saying, Tim, you're too old, you're too old, you're too old, right? But being dyslexic, I see things in patterns. And I'm like, you know what? This is the first time I've ever been 30. Shouldn't I be the one deciding what I can and can't do at 30? Because I've never aged before. This is my first go, right?
Right. You'll never be 30 again.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, consider this. Today is the youngest you'll ever be.
There you go. There you go.
So with that in mind, I said, yeah, I'm going to give this a go. Of the 80 odd guys that started, less than 15 got through. And there was guys younger, fitter, faster, stronger than I was. But I think there's a certain tenacity, growing up in the 70s where, getting beat up at school was just a Tuesday. You wouldn't even tell your mum and dad. It was just what happened, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a certain amount of inbuilt resilience there. But I also have to say this: we faced a lot of resistance first going in, because up until that point in Australian military history, you had to spend 2 years in a regular infantry battalion before you could even apply for special forces. So consider the whole army is there going, what? These guys are jumping the queue. These civilians are jumping the queue. So we were considered civilian queue jumpers, and they deliberately tried to stop the scheme. And we still hold a statistic we call it the School of Cool, School of Infantry. Our platoon holds a record. We've got 300% more injuries than any other platoon that's gone through there.
Wow. That's quite the record.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, all right. Tell me about how it started, as far as did they call it boot camp? They called it boot camp?
Well, boot camp is a familiar term. It's, basic training. Mm-hmm. It was around 8 weeks. where you learn how to march, you learn how to stand in line, you learn how to make your bed exactly how it's supposed to be, you learn how to keep the routine. And they're basically, if you go in there fit, you lose fitness, because all they're doing is screening for injuries. They're trying to find out if you've got any preventable injuries. That's what was my impression of the first, the boot camp experience. And obviously if you can handle being yelled at. And then you do your basic infantry training. But then if you're doing this special forces selection, you do what's called your advanced infantry training. Mm-hmm. And if you get through that, then you can do special forces selection. So I know, the SEAL team has Hell Week, in Australia, we have a Hell Month.
Wow.
And quantity has a certain quality all of its own. And as any veteran knows, it's not just the work you're doing on base. It's having to organize your freaking life and all your admin outside of that, having a car that works, having the bills paid. Yeah. And it's quite the balancing discipline, having all that happening at once. And I will say this, in the first week of boot camp, Carol Lee, I got a letter when they were sending letters saying, hey, honey, my then wife said, hey, I'm pregnant. And I did the math and I'm like, she's going to give birth on my selection. And I'm doing all this incredibly challenging ass-kicking training with this in the back of my mind. And I just thought, just keep moving forward. And then pre-selection, when she was due in 2 weeks and we're about to start this month-long process, they said to me, Tim, this is special forces selection. You can either do selection or you can see your child being born. You can't do both. And I don't think I've ever worked so hard to get to a point in my life. And previous to the military, I was a professional fighter in the early days of mixed martial arts. But back then it was no rules fighting. It was semi-legal in Australia, sort of in these biker bars, and you could smoke in the pubs back then. So I wasn't unused to physical discipline or work, but this was a unique kind of ass kicking that only the military can give you. And there I was with this decision of, do I see my child born or do I, do selection? And my head was about to melt, but then I'm like, I can't see this from my own perspective. If I was looking at this from my child's point of view, and I didn't know if it was going to be a girl or a boy, if I was looking at this from my child's point of view, what would that kid want? Would it want me there at its birth, or would it need a dad with a job?
Yeah, those are valid points.
And so I'm like, as much as all my training in, martial arts was hard work, full-time work, it wasn't paying the bills. This was the only chance I had to earn above minimum wage to give my family, what they need. So I got my then wife. I call her my then wife, not my ex-wife, because I stand for a positive future. And I just noticed if I ever say the word ex-wife, it just has all this negative stuff. So my stand, and you'll just hear me refer to her as my then wife. I got my then wife all the support she needed, flew in family, flew in my mum, and I did selection. And I told the guys, yeah, this is what I want to do. And that's kind of what they wanted to hear. Like, and when you're ready to go, it's 100% in. That's when, concessions come from the other side. So they actually let me have a phone on selection, which is highly not supposed to happen, but they let me have a phone so I could stay in conversations with, the then wife. And I remember the day, it was what we call fire and movement, where you're crawling on your belly, you're shooting, lots of just on your guts moving it. And that where they were crawling us through, there were these cactuses, and these cactuses had these inch-long spikes that would go through your boot. So at the end of every, fire and movement drill, we'd have to take our bayonets and pluck out these cactuses. And you had to be really careful because they were sometimes they were really stuck in you. And if you flicked it out, it would often flick out and hit someone else. Right. So it was a hell of a day. Right. And then I get this message saying the water's broken. It's all happening. And I just looked up at this tree and I'm like, I'm going to regret this day the rest of my life. So anyway, we're setting up the night harbor. I just laid out the claymore. I'm walking backwards, unfurling the claymore debt line. And then out of nowhere, this officer turns up, and he knew that I made a point of introducing my pregnant then wife to this officer. And he turns up out of nowhere and goes, "Oh, hey, Tim, how's it going?" I'm like, "Yeah, no worries, sir." And he goes, "How's Shannon going?" And I said, "Oh, it's all happening. I got the message, the water's broke." And then he said, "You want to go see her?" And that's when I positioned my left foot in front of my right, and I've got my right hand fisted and behind me. And I'm lining up this guy's chin, because this is what they do in selection. They'll say, "You want a drink of water?" And they'll tip it out in front of you. All we got to do is carry all these logs to that truck, and then the truck drives off. So I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to prison tonight if this guy's fucking with me on this point. And so I'm just ready to knock him out, right? And he sort of sensed it. He stepped back. He says, no, Tim, I'm serious. Do you want to go see the birth? And I'm like, okay, this guy's genuine. So I said, yeah. And the good thing about the army is if an officer gets on the phone and starts swearing, things happen really quickly. So a truck came and grabbed all my bombs and bullets. A truck came and grabbed me. Fortunately, we're only about a 2-hour drive from the hospital. And, I've been in the field for weeks. My cams are just stinking. I've still got camouflage paint on my face, and I'm running through the hospital to get to the ward. And I sort of burst into the reception area of the maternity ward, and everyone sort of steps back and they just point, "She's that way."
Oh, goodness. So did you make it in time?
Oh, yes, I made it in time. My son was born, and it was, I don't cry very much, but I cried then. And, it was like all the pain I was physically feeling turned into joy. Oh my gosh, the joy. And hearing that first baby cry, oh, stop it, right? But then there were complications, right? There was problems with the placenta.
Mm-hmm.
And so they hauled her out, and she was really scared because she had this sense that she was going to die. Even beforehand, she said, "Oh, I think I'm going to die during this," and she says, "Tim, I'm scared." And I'm like, I'm scared too. Right. And so there I am with this newly born child, wife's been taken out, and I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know, I'm not in control of anything, but I was baptized as a child. And I thought, the only thing I'm in control of right now is this kid. And I had a bottle of water, and I performed what was called an emergency baptism, where if the circumstance dictates, you can do an emergency baptism. So that's what I did on this newborn child. And then I managed to see my then wife taken into surgery, and I go up to the doctor and say, take good care of her. And I'm waiting by this door, and I think my boy was born at about 10 p.m. and I'm waiting by this door. It's 4 a.m. and I'm stressed. But then I see the doctor walking out in civilian clothing and his bag to go home. I'm like, hey, because dumb old Tim, they go into surgery one way, but they don't come out the same door. I just thought they'd come out the same door.
Right. Well, we don't know any better, right?
Okay. so I'm like, I run up to the doctor and I'm like, what's going on? She said, no, everything's fine. Everything's fine. I managed to see, that she was fine. The bub was fine. And then I am straight out into the field. And we start what's called demarcation, which is 3 days, 3 nights, no sleep, no food, and carrying lots of heavy stuff. But you know what? Even though I got sick because my body was, kind of cooked, I did that with a smile on my face because I'm like, this is just physical pain. I've heard the cry of my firstborn. I am good.
Yeah. That's a sweet story. That is, yeah. And then we look back as parents, right? And we're just in awe of all of it. So things to just cherish. So you make it through. Now there was a question that when you go through advanced training and then you go through special infantry training afterward, was that correct?
So advanced infantry training, and if you get through that, then you can apply for the Special Forces selection.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of tests you've got to pass before you get in, and then you get in to the selection, which is the 28 days. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now you make it through. Yes. And was it like, what was the graduation like?
Well, after demarcation, where you've just had your ass hanging out for 3 days and 3 nights, they give you this big barbecue that you can barely. Well, you can bet it was good not to be carrying heavy shit, but you couldn't eat much of it because your stomach had sort of shrunk. You'd want to eat, and you had this plate full of food, but you just couldn't, right?
Yeah.
But it's funny you should ask about graduation. See, so I might have understated it, Carolee, when I said they were resistant to this scheme called the direct recruiting into special forces. Putting it in soldiers' term, they fucking hated us. They did not want this to work. So when we got our berets, when we finally got our berets, when the 15 odd guys that actually got through got their berets, getting your Sherwood beret is no small thing, right? But our ceremony was right. Okay, you guys have done your selection, you've done your insertion course, because to get beret qualified, you need one insertion course, which is Air, Land, Sea. It goes, righto, throw your lids on, your berets on, and now go scrub out the shitters. So that was our graduation ceremony. Yeah.
Wow.
So
wow, that was their hazing.
Yeah, but the thing was, you don't value something until you see the value in it, right? And so when Afghanistan kicked off 2005 and we went over there and we could do everything that all those other jokers could do, then they're like, oh, actually, this direct recruiting scheme is a really good idea. And they're still sort of running it to this day. So, that Afghanistan was a turning point for people that were in the direct recruiting sort of uptake into the.
Nice. All right. So you've gone through all your training, and then what happens at that point for you after you finish your special infantry training and that's all done and you graduate? What happens after for you?
Well, then you go into what's called your Rio cycle. So in the commandos, where you've got different companies, like 4 different companies, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and everyone rotates through different roles. So you'll have one company on active deployment, one company training the people coming through, one company doing specialized, anti-terrorism stuff, and everything sort of rotates. So we just went through that cycle. Probably no different to any other, infantry platoon. Super busy, always chasing your ass, always having to have your phone on you. And obviously things would kick off, like East Timor kicked off, as that's sort of in our backyard. And so that was just like, okay, who's standing around base? Get them, getting on a plane and going. That was literally it. So yeah, basically, once you're in, your feet don't hit the ground. And I'm sure that's no different to anyone else. My like in my specialty was amphibious operations, and a lot of blokes, because once you get your beret, you need one insertion course to be once you've done your special forces selection to be beret qualified, you need one insertion course, and usually they run the amphib course, which is just another form of selection on the water. And the ocean can kick your ass in such a deeper way than anything on land. And a lot of guys, they're like never doing that again. But I really like the water. I grew up in the water. I'm a spear fisherman of 30 plus years. So I liked it, and that was my specialty. And so I didn't get as many trips over to Afghanistan with that skill set. I had my time in Afghanistan 2009. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I got out in 2010.
So let's talk a little bit about your amphibious training. Tell me a little bit about what that was like.
Sure.
Obviously, you talked about how you enjoyed it, etc., and that became your little niche. But what was it like? What kind of things did they, train you on? Obviously, the equipment for one, but do you recall any funny stories during these trainings?
Oh, looking back, it's all hilarious. Like locking arms and finning in the middle of the ocean with a glow stick on you. You know, like if you're a fisherman, you'll attach a glow stick to a bait, and that's where the fish go to, right? And here's a bunch of men making all this noise with glow sticks attached to them, and it's pitch black, and you've just got the guy next to you, and you're like, this is freaking hilarious, you know.
Did you have fear of a shark?
Look, yeah, but you just gotta, just keep swimming, just that was just the only thing in my head. And as a spear fisherman, I'm comfortable with sharks. I mean, I do have a shark attack story, but that's this more of a civilian thing, I suppose. But and I'm sure this will resonate with a lot of veterans. The second you start thinking, your mind starts going ahead of your body. Like if you're doing a particular activity and you think, oh, after this, I've got to do another activity, then you're stuffed, right?
Right.
So what I noticed, Carolee, is the only time I was experiencing the negative range of emotions was when my mind left my body and started thinking about stuff that hadn't happened yet. All right. And then I so this is actually turned into one of my keynote speeches. I talk about how our bodies contain mass. In Australia, I'm 87 kilos. In your language, I'd be about 190 pounds, right? That's a measurement of mass, a measurement of mass. And right now it's stuck at, my time, 9:28 in the morning. Okay. Because mass is in this moment, but we all own minds, right? They don't contain any mass. Obvious, but it needs to be said because our minds, my mind could go into the future and it could go into the past. And the second it started doing that, it started dividing itself up and I became weaker in the moment. And I sort of explain it where, think of your mind, it's powerful, but there's a certain processing power it has. And so let's allocate 100% of your processing power to your mind. If I start thinking about sharks and I'm kicking in the water, that's putting 40% of my processing power over there. So I'm down to 60%. If I'm worried about something in the, that happened yesterday, then that's taken away potentially another 40%. So I'm down to 20%. And life is really hard when I'm at 20% in this moment because life is hard, right?
Correct.
So I just noticed there's a certain discipline in staying in that moment because when you're 100% in this moment, there's not a goddamn thing you can't handle. And usually when you're at 100%, you start becoming more aware of what's around you and becoming caring and generous for people next to you. So I couldn't control the sharks, but I could control my mind. And I noticed that when I'm strong, I'm making sure the people left and right of me are strong. And then that made me stronger. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
just like
absolutely.
If just like, there's people in the water and they're freaking out and fucking sharks, that's freaking out people either side of them. So, I'm so grateful for those experiences to actually understand that sort of that deep wiring that we all have. And it's hard to articulate unless you're actually in that physical moment. And this is where I think a lot of veterans get stuck. They experience this deep wiring that I think it existed before we were speaking or even thinking. And then to have that experience with brothers and sisters left and right of you, there's a certain connection that you have that is unspoken. And you can't explain it to others because it's an experience. And civilians struggle to sort of understand this unspoken space that you can only go to if you're in those, ass kicking experiences. I hope I explained that without tangenting too much, Carolee.
No, I got it. That made sense to me. And I also feel like in another way of putting it is while you're there in your linked arms and you're helping because the ones on either side of you, because you're in your right, solid, full mind, and you're helping them to become in touch with their full mind. It's strengthening a chain, if you will, right? The links in a chain. And where, you end up with some that become a little bit frail if you're not careful. And when that chain breaks, the strength dissipates. So I understand.
Yeah, and people might find it a little abrasive in military units where you're tested so hard. And the reason why you're tested so hard and the guys will test you is because people don't understand that you need to be tested before you get on board, because once you're on board, you're willing to die for the person next to you. That's how much skin is in the game. And if someone senses that you're not 100% in, then,
right. The trust isn't there.
Yeah.
They're not going to rely on you as much to help them if it came down to it.
And I might say this as well. A lot of veterans struggle in the transition period. I know I did, where trust was like our superpower. We could do incredible things because we trusted the person next to us. And I believe as humans, our peace, power, confidence is relative to how connected we feel, right? Mm-hmm. And often, and I'm just going to say this, because when we get out of the, our defense force career, then what was the last time I felt power and strength and connection? Well, I showed trust and loyalty. And so a lot of these veterans show loyalty, so trust to people that don't deserve it. And then they get betrayed. And that is such a fracture to the foundation of who they are and what they are. This is where cranky veterans are born, because they've shown loyalty, they've shown trust, it's been betrayed. And there's a saying, there's a special level of hell for betrayers, right? But I just want to speak to that now, because that's where I got stuck there for a period of time. I saw a lot of other veterans stuck in that same space, upholding what they believe is the absolute right thing to do and the thing that worked for them, and then having it not work the way it's worked every time in the past.
Right. You end up going to Afghanistan. Are you still with me? Oh, okay. You were very still. I thought maybe you froze up.
Yeah, it's every now and then us men do this strange thing called listening, Carolee.
Wow.
You might not have experienced it before. All right. He's frozen. There's something wrong.
I
was
frozen. Like, there's definitely something wrong here. That's hilarious, Tim. That is hilarious. All right. So you find yourself being deployed to Afghanistan. What's going through your mind when you learn you're headed there?
Great. Look, if there was a war on in my lifetime, I wanted to be a part of it. And at the same time, I had this sense I was going to die. It was really weird. Like, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to die because I don't know, man. Like, I think it could be those people that are born in that sort of warrior class. They're not meant to live long lives. They're just like,
Right.
well, I'm not, this is what I'm here to do, and it's kind of comforting to think I'm just on a short timeline. So let's just make the most of it. So, I was used to that, but I'm like, I do have a wife and 2 kids at home. So, in Australia, we have something called body bits insurance. You can insure different body bits, right? And you can imagine all the guys joking about the stuff they want to insure the most,
Oh, that's hilarious.
And so, before I left, I got really good body bits insurance. I made my, last, will and testament to the people that I cared about. And it was interesting, actually. Some guys had never actually faced their mortality before. So to actually write letters like you're dead, they were like, fuck that, no way. It was just a bit of a bridge too far. And it was really hard leaving the airport. And my boy was 2009. He was about 5, right? So just a toddler. And he was so upset that Daddy was leaving. And I had to sort of pry him off of me, put my backpack on my shoulders, walk away. And his last words were, "Daddy, don't go."
Oh no.
Fucking hell, man.
That had to be so tough. Oh, it is tough when you've got to go, and then there's nothing you can do. And I can only empathize with how you had been feeling at that moment.
Yeah, it was a tough army day, that one.
Yeah. So, were you prepared for the scenery and geography of Afghanistan?
Yeah, this is what no one tells you. Afghanistan's really beautiful.
Depending upon where in Afghanistan.
I'm talking about geographical landscape, like the actual look of the land. I completely understood why that was the hippie trail in the 70s, because there's these open spaces. And in Australia, we're a very old country. Everything's very rounded. Our hills, our mountains aren't that big.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's kind of flat. But it's such new sort of territory over there. These mountains would go up and then go up and up and up. And just when you thought they'd stop, it was like they were shitting out the top of their heads, these mountains. So it was, there were some moments I'm like, I can totally see how people could come here and sit on top of a mountain and get all zen and shit,
That's true. That is very true. So they had prepared you in advance of what the scenery was going to be like. How was it? Did you have the opportunity to mingle with the civilians there, or were you strictly on base? How did that work for you?
We look, the Aussies, we interacted probably a bit more. Like, we saw the Yanks going out in these big tanks, and it just looked like just a tank on wheels, no matter what the vehicle. Our vehicles were, we did have like Bushmasters, which were these, the heavily armored vehicles, but most of the vehicles in our convoy were these open top vehicles. So think of a 4-wheel drive with the roof cut off and machine guns in place. So when we'd go into a local area, people would approach us because they could see a human there on their level, because we're pretty low to the ground. And we would, it was interesting. We would, say a few words back and forth, throw them a few lollies. And we had our, the local Afghan forces that we worked with. I wouldn't really rate them as soldiers, though. They were, see, you have to remember, in Afghanistan, if you were to pick a side, it's a matter of time before you're dead, because there's always this pendulum of power, right?
Right.
So what a family will do to survive in Afghanistan, if they've got two sons, they'll send one to work to the Taliban, the other one to work for the National Army, because that makes sense to them, because whoever's in power, they're covered, and these guys will talk to each other and deconflict. Oh, we're doing a patrol here. Okay, we're going to be here. So it's this kind of crazy living together, which makes sense when you're in that survival mode. Whereas, in the Western world, we've got the luxury of pick a side,
Yeah. And so you got to speak with them, talk to them. And was there ever a time where you were nervous about being with those civilians, those same civilians that you had conversed with, etc.?
Yeah, we had a few green on blues, not in my unit, but those guys were always at a bit of an arm's distance from me personally. I mean, there was plenty of times I was shitting myself in Afghanistan, but it wasn't around the Afghan guys on our side of things.
Okay.
I mean, there's some funny stories, you can tell about the stuff they did in the field, but yeah, I never felt nervous around them. Not my experience of it, no.
What was it like? I'm going to assume you had a chow hall.
Chapel? Yeah.
Chow hall.
Oh, you mean a mess?
Okay. Yes, a mess.
I thought you said chapel. I'm like, yeah, we had a chapel. We had a padre.
Yes, a chow hall being, I guess, the American term.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but yeah, we don't call it that. Yeah.
Cantina? No, that's Mexican. So, what was it like for the food that you had there versus back on base or in Australia?
Okay, so this was the good thing about being in. I mean, I was aware that being in Special Forces, you had certain privileges, and I didn't take it for granted. But our food, we were always allowed double rations, and there was always a big budget for food. So our mess hall was amazing, to the point where I really felt I didn't deserve to be called, a veteran, where I'm in this mess hall, chow hall, and there's this fridge completely filled with every ice cream you could get from, your local deli at home, your local shop.
Wow.
And I'm like, I do not feel like I can compare myself to those veterans of World War II and World War One, because this luxury seems so out of place. And it was just that polar opposite, where, there was that kid in me that went, wow, you've got all these ice creams. But then I'm like, I'm in this fucking war zone.
Right.
It was just a moment. And if someone was looking at me, they'd be like, why is that guy staring at that freezer for the last 5 minutes, just staring into space? I was just lost in this moment with all these freaking ice creams. Yeah.
Wow. Did you ever get to eat with any of the Afghan people?
Yeah, no, they did a pretty mean goat stew, I think. I think my love of goat came from them. Yeah.
Interesting. Goat is not something I care to eat. Not to say I haven't had. I have goat's milk even, and goat cheese. Not for me.
Oh, yeah. It does need to be cooked right. I'll say that much. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So you finish. How long was that deployment while you were there?
About 5 months. Yeah.
5 months. And from there, where did you go?
So this really started my exit from the military. So prior to my Afghan deployment, could be my ADHD, could be my dyslexia, but I struggled with soldiering on base, right? I was always the one that probably didn't have his shit in one sock. And so in soldiers' terms, in Australia, there's one guy in the platoon they call the shit cunt, right? I was called the shit cunt because from the outside in, I didn't look like a good soldier. And, you know, when Afghan happened and they saw that I could soldier as good as anybody, if not better. In fact, there was some stuff I did over there that guys went up and actually apologized to me. So, Tim, we actually believed all the shit talking everyone else said. And so I'm like, yeah, this is a job for life for me. I finally got a bunch of brothers around me that see me as I am, got my back. Okay, I'm in for life. But then fate maybe gets in the way. So at the end of this successful deployment, we plan this end of deployment piss up, which is just like a get together with booze. And we were going to hire a boat and go on Sydney Harbour and just have our own time drinking. I wasn't organising it, but I paid my money to get on there. And then the guys organising it said, oh, let's have strippers on there too. Right? Now, the promise I made to my then wife, and she always knew this, is I'd never do anything away from her that I wouldn't do with her right next to me. So I strippers aren't my thing, but I'm a big boy. If they're at one end of the boat, I'm just going to be down the other end of the boat, whatever. I wasn't that attached to it, right? But here's the thing. Some of the wives heard about this, and then they complained to the CO, the big dude on base. And that then rolled downhill to this particular major. And they said, and he was told, you can't have strippers on the boat. And this made him beyond furious. I'm not sure if it was the fact that he couldn't have strippers or he felt that his authority was undermined, right? But he brought out the whole company, all of us, right? And you don't have to give Special Forces soldiers orders. All you have to do is the commander has to show their intent, and we fill out on the intention. How we do it's up to us. We know how to do it. You just tell us your intent and we'll fulfill on that, right?
Right.
And it was pretty clear this guy's intention was he was so pissed off that he couldn't have strippers and his authority was undermined. And then right at the end of this big tirade, he said, right, does anyone here have a problem with strippers? And then there was this existential moment. It was literally another form of Tim putting his hand on my shoulder. And it's funny because he was laughing. The guy with his hand on my shoulder was laughing. He says, hey, Tim, there is never a convenient time to speak your truth, to be yourself. And you got 3 seconds to speak your truth. Right?
Oh, no.
And I'm like, shit. And I stick my hand up. And it was like Moses through the Red Sea. Everyone's heads just turned in. And this major took a step back and went, what you do? And I could see that major actually respected me for that. And afterwards, but that didn't stop him transferring my ass 2 weeks later. Right? Okay.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I had a bunch of guys come up to me afterwards saying, oh, good on you, Tomo. I wanted to put my hand up too. And I'm like, yeah, well, you fucking didn't.
Exactly.
And I saw something very clearly that day, that these men had all the courage in the world to go into the breach.
Mm-hmm.
They've got courage to do that. But then do you have the courage to actually let your true self out? because for me to actually speak my truth, I had to take my armor off for a second,
Right. Yeah.
and I go to this the new company. I went from Bravo to Delta, I believe. And I was happy. I'm not, I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not unhappy with that because Delta was about to go on deployment again. I'm like, that's cool. I do best when on deployment, right?
Right.
That's where my zone kicks in. But then when I get there, the officers and all the, sergeants gather around me and they said these words, and I quote, "We fucking heard about you, cunt."
Oh no.
And I'm like, fuck. Look, I know what's going to happen next. I'm not scared of dying, but I'm going to be the guy that's put through the door first every fucking time, and when I get shot to shit, they're going to write me a really good note saying, yeah, Private Thomas was an awesome soldier. We all loved him. Fuck, you did. So I'm not going to die for a bunch of pricks that don't care about me. And so I was stuck, Carol Lee. I had a job that I thought I had for life. I wanted to have for life. And yet if I was to stay there, it would mean that I would agree with their sense of my self-worth.
That's a fair thing. Yeah.
And literally that night, and I told my then wife, I said, look, that's it. I don't know what we're going to do next, but, we can't stay. And to her credit, she was completely supportive. She could see that, her husband was just in that space, right? Little did I know. And this is what people don't tell you. Everyone's saying, speak your truth and all that sort of shit. But there's a price to that.
There absolutely is. Yes.
I lost the job that I thought I wanted for the rest of my life. Okay. I lost the, connections I had with all these brothers. And I'm just going to sort of fast forward a little bit just to sort of, I'm not going to tie a pretty bow on this, but there was something I wasn't seeing. So when I got out and I went through this loop, alcohol, pills, I started working in the veteran recovery space. And I had no training, but I had a goal. And my goal was to save 40 veteran lives from suicide. Because I chose that number because that's how many us in Australia had lost to bombs and bullets in Afghanistan. But we've lost 30 to 40 times that amount to suicide. And it's not really a common statistic. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to die happy if I achieve that. But with the lessons that I'd learned, that goal was achieved within 12 months.
Wow. That's incredible.
And so, looking back on that moment, yes, speaking my truth cost me the job that I wanted for life and cost me a bunch of connections. But I never would have gone into that space. I never would have had that surprising outcome had I not spoken my truth back in 2009.
It's that old adage of when one door closes, another door opens.
Yeah. And when it closes, sometimes it can close on your fingers.
It can, and it can really sting. There's no doubt. It can really sting. But it just sounds like you found that aha moment.
Yeah. And I think, look, the way I say it to veterans is you might not think you're special, but I got $5 saying you've been through some shit. All right. And us veterans, we tend to think that just handling the shit each day is an admirable thing to do because we there's a certain value we can have by enduring without flinching, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the way I talk about it, especially post-service, is we're not supposed to live in that shit. We're supposed to transform that into fertilizer. All right. That shit is actually there to help everything grow, but it can't stay in that form. It's actually got to be turned into fertilizer. And it might take you, a week, a month, a decade to turn that shit into fertilizer. But guess what? That's the amount of time you're going to save other people. So the question I always ask everybody, and this isn't just a veteran-centric question, this is everybody, right? Think about what you're up against. Everyone's up against something. Not just veterans. It could be cancer. It could be a relationship. It could be a work thing. Like, think about what you're really genuinely up against. Then ask this golden question. How many other people do you think are up against what you're up against right now? And don't say a lot. Give it a number. It could be 10, could be 20. When I was going through the medical system and they didn't seem to want to make me better, I'm like, there's at least 4 million people in this same situation. So take whatever number you give it and really give it a number. Like, think about it, give it a number, because those people exist. They're in the world. And in my case, I'm like, well, at least 4 million. And that's being conservative.
Right.
And when you give it a number, I invite you to put half of that number on your right and half of that number on your left. And they're all looking in and they're willing you on. They're feeling your pain. And they're saying, if you can find a way forward for you, you can find a way forward for us. And breaking your isolation is probably the most powerful thing you can do as a first step in your recovery.
Yes.
Too many times people go, oh, I've got to do this to recover. No, first thing, we've got to break our isolation. We've got to go, fuck, I'm not the only one. And conversely, there's a lot of power in naming the number of how many other people are going through it, because making progress in the first stages of getting healing, it's really difficult. To make an inch of progress, it might take you 6 months, right? But consider, if there's, the way I thought about it, if there's 4 million other people up against what I'm up against, if I can make an inch, that's not just 1 inch, that's 4 million inches.
Right.
And
you've opened that door that much for all of them.
Yeah. And I figured those 4 million people, a lot of them I haven't met yet, but they're going to be saying, you know what, Tim, we're so glad that when you're up against it, you chose to move forward, because that inch that took you 10 years to make, you've helped us do it in far less time. And you really, once you see those people and you feel their willing intention, it's a very natural thing to want to find a way forward. You don't have to know how, you just have to know that if you can do it for you, you can do it for all those others.
Right.
And only, I'm going to say this now, only you are qualified to break their isolation. So like I said, if someone's going through cancer, they're qualified to break the isolation of other people going through cancer. I can't. I haven't experienced cancer, right? In my work as a veteran, I was able to break the isolation of other veterans. And I'll give you the reason why I could be so effective, the reason why I could have those 40 veteran lives saved within 12 months is because I saw something no one else saw. And that was the way pain actually works. And it doesn't matter if the pain's emotional or physical, Carolee, it'll get to a certain duration or intensity where it transforms, not just to regular physical pain, but into loneliness, isolation. I'm the only one going through this.
Yes.
Okay. Because that's the point where your intelligence gets tourniqueted off and you get into this fight or flight mode. Because if I'm the only one that's got my back, I can't drop my guard for a second. Because if I do, something bad's going to happen. It's going to be my fault.
Yeah.
And so guess what? You're not sleeping as well. So I saw two things. A, breaking the isolation that the pain causes, because that's the most damaging thing of the pain. And then two, restoring people out of a state of fatigue. Because if you can't drop your guard, you're not sleeping. And sleep is an act of dropping your guard. and people, once they had their isolation broken, once they had their sleep restored, it's like this golden compass turned on inside of them, and they knew exactly where to go. It's like the rest of their brain came online.
Right. It was a reset.
Yeah. Technically, if I could really be neurologically precise here, when you're in your fight or flight, you're in a part of your brain called your amygdala.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's basically got control of your body before your thoughts do. So you can, and it's there to react quick. So your body reacts without even, thinking. But then, and the other part of your brain, your executive function, is your prefrontal cortex. And compared to your amygdala is one exhausted person just trying to get through the day. Your prefrontal cortex, your executive function, is like a team of 100, completely united, knowing exactly what to do next. And they have each other's back. And the blocks, as I saw, between amygdala, prefrontal cortex, fight or flight to executive function, was loneliness and fatigue.
Right.
And once you just saw that as the main thing, then people recovered in such a rapid period of time with far less resources. Because if you do not see that, if you do not address the isolation, if you do not address the fatigue, there's all these downstream problems, and you can get years lost to trying to fix all these downstream problems from loneliness and fatigue. So with no training, with just, dyslexia, seeing things in patterns, and with having a, what I saw as a dishonorable discharge, that was there to give me skin in the game, because when someone's nervous system is cooked, they don't need more words. They need to sense, and they will sense from your nervous system that you'd been there before. In that unspoken place, you can break their isolation. You can turn on their inner compass, just turns back on. And this is where, I got 6 pages of weapons I'm qualified in, right? But the most powerful thing I have isn't a weapon. It's a conversation, an authentic conversation with a capital A, really speaking your truth, because I've just seen it time and time again. Authentic words have an ability to reach the unseen parts of a person. And the picture I have in my head is when people are hurting, when they're all alone, there's words they want to say, they can't say it, and they become like rocks around their heart.
Right.
And the world we live in is really good at giving you short-term fixes. They'll, for years I poured alcohol and pills over those rocks, right? But if you can be that one that articulates what it's like to be in that situation and speak the words that other people want to say in that genuine, authentic way, those rocks dissolve, and it's a whole other level of connection once we actually, tap into that space.
Right. Right. And that makes perfect sense to me. So when you were getting out, you said dishonorable?
Well, I called it dishonorable. It was just a regular discharge, but the way I classed it was I left defeated, because I'm like, I want this job, but I can't fight the whole army. If these guys are, committed to putting me through the door first, I just can't agree with that.
Yeah.
So it felt dishonorable, considering I wanted to serve my whole life in that particular role. Yeah.
Yeah. But on paper, it was.
Oh no, on paper it was just
a discharge.
Yeah, just me putting my discharge in. Yeah.
And when that occurred, did the military, Australian military, did they provide any resources for re-entry into civilian life?
There's a cut and paste transition seminar that they do, but it was like, okay, I'm sure it's improved, right? I'm sure it's improved. I'm hoping it's improved, but it was like all these great organizations there to help veterans. It's like they sent their youngest freaking intern up to give the presentation, you know? So there's this freaking 18-year-old talking about how to live in the real world. And we're like, fuck that. You know, I'm sure they had great resources, but it wasn't in a way that anything could be uptaken from, right? I think for my injuries, they allowed maybe $6 a fortnight so I could buy pain relief. But other than that, I just thought I was one of those guys. I'm just like, I'm out. I'm going to just work really hard. I'll get a job and it'll all go away, you know? And I thought I was fine, but I couldn't not drink 6 to 10 beers at the end of each day. I couldn't not. I had to. There was some part of me imbalanced that the alcohol temporarily made me feel balanced with.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's probably the same with any other addiction, if you will, right? You have that sense of leveling off, and that it grounds you a little more. And yeah, I understand.
Yeah, it wasn't the alcohol that was the problem. It was my sense of imbalance.
Yeah.
Or sense of, you know, I was out of alignment somehow, or I wasn't healed. You know, imbalance comes in many forms, but my commitment to getting people options away from what was easily available, because the second I stuck my hand up for help, they just threw a pharmacy at me. And if you think about this, like if you're in your amygdala, if you're given stuff to sleep, your amygdala is still firing, and it doesn't push you into your executive function. It just slows everything down and allows you to, you know, potentially interact better with others. Now, I'm going to say this now. I'm not against pills. There's a time and a place for everything, right? But what no one's talking about is the cost of taking these pills. It's a short-term loan. They'll give you $100 this week, but you got to pay back $200 next week, and then you got to get another loan to cover the debt, right? And the cost isn't just in your own energy. There's a whole lot of unseen stuff. I believe with all the pharmaceuticals I took, there was a bunch of memories washed out of my head. It was quite scary for me in that time when I went around a mate's place and I said, "Oh, this place looks familiar." And he looked at me like I was stupid. And he goes, "Tim, you helped me move in here." And I'm like, "Oh shit. How much other stuff had I forgotten? You know, geez, I hope I was a good person." Right. So there's all these costs to taking pharmaceuticals that they don't tell you about, but also no one's talking about the natural alternatives that are, in my experience, just as good, if not better. And these natural alternatives you don't hear about so much because they're free. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about what, if anything, you had lined up for work when you came back.
Well, I did what most confused commandos did, and that's open up an outdoor boot camp training session, right? Civilians like being yelled at, right?
They think they do until they're in the heat of it.
But no, I ran a successful outdoor training camp, and that worked in well with me because as long as I was on for those, 2 to 4 hours of training, each day, everything was fine. As long as my work was going well, then I was telling myself I was fine. The way I describe wellness to other guys is think of wellness like the roof of your house, and it's supported by 4 walls. And us guys, we tend to have this show wall where we have all our trophies on, right? And if anyone points out a structural fault in any area of our life, we go, don't you see my show wall? Don't you see how awesome I am at this? Everyone values me for this. So it's this big redirect. As long as we've got one area of our life that's working, we'll just keep redirecting there, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I couldn't ignore the fact that my family life was breaking down, because I thought I'll get a job, I'll try and be successful, I'll be right. No, I wasn't. So, and I discovered then that not all healers, and when I say healers, I'm talking, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, men's groups, they're not all born equal. They're kind of like coffee shops. They're everywhere, but it's really hard to find a good one. And it probably took me 6 years to find a psychologist that actually could do for me in far less time what everyone else couldn't do in a lifetime. So they are out there. And look, I'll just flag this little pattern that I've found to be universal with veterans. There's good news and bad news when it comes to healing. The good news is when you find the right healer, holy shit, healing takes far less time than you think. The bad news is finding the right healer is probably going to be your full-time job. So your job isn't actually to get healing. Your job is to search for a good healer. That's the hardest part. The hardest part is the search part. No one told me that. So I'm like nearly going to jail when I've told this psychologist everything that I didn't want to talk about. And then he kind of sniffs and goes, "Oh, you think it was a problem with your mum and dad?" Like, so a lot of veterans say, "Look, I tried to get help. The help didn't help. In fact, it made it worse." And I've really got a heart for those guys. But what you need to understand is the good healers are out there, and you usually get them from a referred network of people you trust. So don't go flicking through the, Google. Go into your network and say, "Look, who do you guys recommend? What's worked?" Because in Australia we have what's called the digger net, right? Australian soldiers are often referred to as diggers, and the digger net is quicker than the internet. And I would encourage anybody who's thinking, "Oh, maybe I should," talk to a mate, and if he doesn't know, he'll have a mate that knows. And through that, you'll have a higher likelihood, not 100% guaranteed, but a higher likelihood of getting a healer that will be able to do for you in far less time what any other so-called healer could do. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Yeah. So tell me about after you have gone through the process of healing, what happens next in your life?
Learning how to do generosity right. Okay. So the way I've experienced energy is it's never static. Good energy wants to connect with more good energy and more good energy. Disconnected energy wants to disconnect. And when I was doing all that good work, in the veteran space, 40 veteran life saved within a year. What nobody knew, Carolee, was every 6 or 7 weeks, I used to have to write myself off drunk for like 3 days because I was getting a kick out of helping others, and it was good to be generous, but I was doing it wrong. And I'll just explain that. So if I'm just at 100% and I give somebody not 10%, there's a part of me that goes, "You know what? You better do something with that," because I'm down to 90% here, right? So I had attachments to what my expectations of my output, right?
Right.
And I was giving of myself. I wasn't giving of my abundance. I was using helping others as an opiate to my own problems, right? And it's a very common thing in the veteran space. Like you ask a veteran, "Oh, you need help?" "Nah." "You want to help others?" "Yeah." Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I said, I was using helping others as an analgesic, if you would say that. And so now it's what I've learned is I don't give of myself anymore. I give of my abundance. And for me, that makes sense, because if I'm at 100% and I give 10%, I'm down to 90%, and you better do something with it. But if I invest in me and I'm at 500% more than what I need, then I can give 20% away a day. People can love it, hate it. It can fail. It can work. They can tell me to F off. Don't matter. You know, I'm in touch with something so much greater. So every day now, I ask people to consider, to see energy like money. How you invest it is how you get it back, right? So it doesn't matter how much you have, it's how you invest it. And if you can invest in you at the start of the day, and I'll say this, the first 5 minutes of the day are the most important. If you can win the first 5 minutes, you've won the day. You lose the first 5 minutes, the rest of the day is really freaking hard, right? So I'm all about, mornings are mine. I create that energetic portfolio. I get 500% more than what I need. And then I can give freely. So knowing that I was going to be on your podcast today, I got up really early. I did my breath work in bed. I did my morning workout. I did my barefoot walking. I did a sauna, time in the sun. And so, that gives the version of me that can, confidently give and not have any attachment to what people get or don't get. Not trying to control any outcomes here. But I also am aware that, and this is the killer here, energy has a shelf life of, 24 to 36 hours. If we don't take the first part of the day to invest in ourselves, before I learnt this, I had a lot of people say to me, we never know what version of Tim's going to turn up today. Right? Mm-hmm. Because two completely different people in this world, and they're both me, they're both you. There's the version of you that sleeps well, invests in the first 5 minutes of the day, invest in themselves so they create that abundance. And the way they move through the world is what I call an energetic millionaire. Okay. And life occurs very differently when you've got a couple of $1 million in your back pocket than if you're walking down the street and you've only got a couple of cents.
Right.
And yeah, so that sort of catchy term, energetic millionaire, is what I try and help people to become. But also I know that I can't really have that reach the depths it's supposed to reach inside others if I'm not embodying that very deep part of me.
Right. So let's talk a little bit. You briefly broached the subject of breath work in bed, and you have your banner there behind you. Tell me about that, and what was it that caused you to create this?
Okay, so I didn't know what breathwork was, but I remember being beyond fatigued in the dirt of Afghanistan. And, we train for fatigue. We know what pain is, right? But outside the wire, there's a whole other level of fatigue. You've lost mates, you've had bits blown off others. And I'm like, what's the fucking point? I'm going to die in this shithole. It's like you've only got 2 cents worth of energy. And then it was like, well, Tim, if you've only got 2 cents worth of energy, you better invest that wisely, right? And without being shown or prompted, whenever I was horizontal in the dirt, and we never got anything that you'd call 8 hours of sleep, but when I was horizontal in the dirt, I took that 2 cents and this is where it gets a bit weird. I felt led to picture a pinhole in the tip of my thumb, and I sucked air through it, like through my nose. Okay. And I'm like, that's feeling really good. And eventually my thumb turned into white light in my mind's eye. Right.
Right.
And I'm like, that feels really good. And I breathe through the tip of my thumb down my thumb, and then I breathe through my finger. And then I went to sleep, and that 2 cents turned into $2. Now, I didn't know what it was, but I saw that there was a return. And then the next time I was horizontal, I invested $2, across all my fingers, down my hand, up my arm. Went to sleep, woke up with $20. And as I was massaging this investment, I noticed my awareness opened up and I become aware of others around me. Whereas before, when I only had 2 cents, fuck everybody, I'm going to die. It's all about me. Boo hoo. Okay. And that's real though. And that's a nervous system protecting itself. That's, I'm not making that wrong. Because it's a natural perspective. When you're really low, you can't see too much, but when you're higher up, you can see more. So when I started to see more, I started seeing that, hey, the team I'm in, if they're having a bad, it doesn't matter if I'm having a good day, if they're having a bad day, I'm having a bad day.
Right.
So then I said, well, I need to invest in me so I can invest in them. Right. And I started doing that. And it got me through Afghanistan. I didn't know what breathwork was. But then when I was going through my divorce during COVID, and this was sort of story as old as time, lost house, home, everything. I just had a car and a dog, lost regular access to kids, sleeping on the couch in my parents' place. And you can bet at 2 a.m., I ain't sleeping.
Right.
And the irony was I knew about breathwork. I knew that if I did breathwork, it would give me the peace I was wanting. But in that moment, I needed it the most when my head was getting, attacked. It's like I couldn't. It's like I physically couldn't. And I realized that, your brain's a bit like a garden. Whatever you water grows.
Right.
And I was watering the weeds of stress, and they'd taken over the garden. And these frickers, they become sentient. Eyeballs pop out of these weeds, and they know the things that you do that feed them. And they're hyper aware of the things that you do that starve them, right? And they knew that if I breathed, they'd get kicked out. So they're like, fuck that. And 2 a.m., I get out of bed. I'm about to do drugs, alcohol, self-harm, maybe all three. And I look at my left thumb again. And I say, Tim, you can take one breath. Take one fucking breath. And I drove it into my chest and went, this is working. This is working. Take two. And I drove a second finger in with a second breath. Okay, get to 5. Finger after finger, breath after breath. And then somewhere between breath 15 and breath 25, those stress weeds got kicked out. The rest of my brain came online, said, Tim, this is working. Don't stop. Okay. And I realized there the power of breath work, but also the power of the things that stop us using our breath, using those things. And so I started creating these stupid ass recordings of my own voice going, hey, Tim, breathe in, breathe out. And if it's stupid at work, it's not stupid, I guess.
Exactly.
So I just noticed that as much as we can all breathe, it does need a form of prompting, especially when we really, really need it, right?
Correct.
And so I started these tapes and they were working, and then I shared them with my friends and they worked for them. And I'm like, well, I can't do what other people do, but if I was to look at the best thing I could do for someone else, that would have to be to improve their sleep. Because in war, if you want to destroy somebody, you destroy their sleep. Like a lot of our operations in Afghanistan was to attack the enemy's sleep. We didn't know about the science of it, but we knew if we could take it out for 3 nights, it would mess them up better than a bullet. So, if you can consider, if you really want to fuck someone up, you fuck with their sleep. If you want to build someone up, well, let's build up their sleep, Right. And so that's where I'm like, okay, I see this stuff work. It actually works. I started doing, workshops on army bases, and it was working. I got this email from a Louis Colonel saying, hey, Tim, after your workshop, we had guys coming up saying that was the first good night's sleep they had in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, that was easy. Why didn't you get me out 5 years ago? But what he said next made me withdraw from public life for 2 years. Because when I was, going through my shitty time, there was a lot of people with powerful and positive stuff that would work for a little bit, but then wouldn't work, a week later. Right.
Right.
And so the promise I made to myself is I called it an acronym, 3 Ps. I call it my P test. And so the 3 Ps I promised I would fulfill on is everything I do has to be powerful. It has to be positive. But the 3rd P is most important. It's got to be permanent. If we say we care about people, we've got to care about them tomorrow, next week, next year. And so what this Louis Colonel pointed out was I wasn't permanent, because he said, you're good when you're there, but what have you got when you're not there? Okay.
Wow. A challenge, actually.
Yeah. And I'm like, I am not permanent. So I dropped out of public life. I created breathwork in bed, and breathwork in bed is there to help people see that the 2 most powerful investments you can make in yourself is the 5 minutes going to sleep and the 5 minutes waking up. Most people unconsciously poison those moments. This is where veterans, they talk about the vultures on the bedhead, negative thoughts ready to dive into your head the second you become conscious.
Right.
So I'm like, if we can just have an easy breathwork prompt at the exact moment that it's supposed to be, then that's going to make all the difference, right? Because I see so many people just trying to wring the freaking life out of the daytime hours, right? Do more, right? First thing I say is don't do anything more, okay? Let's do the things that are aligned with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to figure out what's aligned for you when the quality of your sleep is low, when your nervous system's cooked, when you can't drop your guard. So if you can gift yourself that breath, 5 minutes going to sleep, 5 minutes waking up, then as much as it's not spectacular and it's not seen by anybody, it shows up in everything you do.
Right. Yeah. With all of this, throughout this conversation, and I'm based off of the conversation that we had and you speaking of your son, and I don't know if he has or has not joined the military, but if somebody came to you and said, I'm looking to join the military, what would be your words of wisdom for them?
I want to ask why you want to join. I don't want to assume that you joined because I wanted to join, you know. My mate got messed up. I'm going to mess a bunch of guys up. And there is a part of me that does want to serve this country, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can let it be someone else's son, brother, husband serving the country. So I always ask, so why do you want to join? And if it's service related, if they want to serve, I would just say move forward with your eyes open and go towards the people that agree with that, not the guys that take advantage of it.
Right.
Because in any human heavy workspace, there is imperfections. Like everyone knows that humans aren't perfect, right? But what they haven't quite put together, Carolee, is you get enough humans together, those imperfections get to critical mass. And inside a human heavy resource like, you know, the army, there's a lot of imperfections reaching critical mass. So I would advise the person, you know, to go in there, you know, if you're going to go in 100%, but be discerning. Because a lot of people talk a big game and then they don't have the integrity to back it up. And there's also people in the army that are quite willing to attack you if you're some kind of, if you don't quite fit the mold.
Right.
So you also have to understand that in those situations, they kind of own you and they can make life really hard, more than hard, or practically impossible. So I feel pulled between my sense of duty, my sense of serving for this country, but also I'm not stupid. I'm fully aware that there's people wanting to take advantage of those good intentions. And there's people in the system that are fucking vampires. They're pieces of shit with rank that know how to fuck others over. They don't have anything to contribute. They're just really good at taking, So the life lessons I learned from those people that just knew how to take was so powerful. And I'm of the opinion now that, just because something bad happened doesn't mean that good things can't come from it. Okay. So if good can come from bad, was that bad thing actually bad? Right.
That's a fair question.
So that sort of reduced my desire for like outright revenge on some of these vampirous rank types, and it's helped me understand it took the veil off my eyes that, if I do the right thing with the right intentions, the right thing's going to happen. Right. There's okay. Here's the advice I would give somebody. Consider the army ages you in dog years. Every 1 year in is like 7 years out. Okay. And your uptake of wisdom, you have to match that with that accelerated exposure. If that makes sense,
Yes. Yeah. What doesn't kill you makes you
stronger. Give me a thumbs up if you agree with the service ages you in dog years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I want to say thank you very, very much for taking the time to come out. And while we have a moment, I'm going to go ahead and share your website for those interested to take a look. And let's see, make sure we all can see that. There we go. Okay, so, and then if they want to know more, now granted, the best way probably to get a hold of you is going to be by email, yes?
Well, look, LinkedIn, email.
Okay.
But look, in the promise I made to myself about permanency, like we've had a really good conversation right now, and I feel confident that the most powerful thing authentic conversation you can do is break isolation, where people go, oh, now I see clearly with this, right? That permanency for me would actually be giving people a breathwork technique that they could have potentially for the rest of their life. Do we, I'm going to maybe push my luck here, but can we have 5 minutes so I can show people a little something that they could use?
Absolutely. Let's move that. Okay.
All right. So what I'm going to show you right now is how to completely relax your body in less than 3 breaths. All right.
Okay.
And to do this, everything's an invitation. Nothing's forced. This is just an offering. So I always ask Carol Lee for permission to let the breath do what it's supposed to do. So for everyone listening and yourself, Carol Lee, do you give permission for your own breath to make every single part of your body feel really, really good?
Yes.
Awesome. And if you're listening in the comments, just put in a yes. I'd love to see that. And the second one, just as easy. Carol Lee, do you give permission to your very own breath to make every part of your conscious thinking mind feel really, really good?
Yes.
Awesome. Last one's just as easy. Do you give permission to your very own breath to make your unconscious mind feel really, really good?
Yes.
Yes. Takes a little bit more thought, that one, but
I know. I had to unconscious.
We got to let it in. We got to let it in.
Okay.
All right. So this is really easy. All I'm going to get you to do is breathe in, but then breathe in more. Just do that. Breathe in more. Now hold it and just wriggle your shoulders, wriggle your arms, wriggle your spine, wriggle, 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 wriggle. Feel it opening up, feel it opening up. And if you're brave, let out a really big sigh. Out, 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 out. And just let that go through your system. That's your energy. I didn't do anything for you. This is you doing this for you. And you're going to be able to access this whenever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I'm going to show you next is when you breathed in more, did you notice that your top third kind of filled up a bit more?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So I'm going to show you how to boost that top third rather in a surprising way. Hold up 2 fingers like that. Okay. Now put out your thumb and I want you to pinch down as hard as you can on that thumb. That's it. All right. So this thing here, this motion, this is a turbo boost for your top third. So what we're going to do is blow it out, and halfway through our inhale, we're going to hit those power buttons and just notice the effect it has on our top third. All right.
Okay.
So exhale with me, blow it out. Out, 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 out. Start breathing in and then hit those power buttons and then hold and wriggle, 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 wriggle. Let it open up, shake out the day. And then again, let out a nice loud sigh. Ah. And again, just let that into your body, let it into your mind. This is us letting it in. We're receiving here. We're not doing anything. We're just letting it in. Now, did you notice when you hit those buttons that you could boost that top third a little bit?
I think I felt a little more increase, but it was not anything that I guess it would be the subconscious thinking.
Didn't jump out at you?
Yeah. Just
Okay, no problem.
like I felt a little bit more of an increase, but I was also very low on breath at that stage, right? So you're exhaling and then all of a sudden your intake quickly. So it was one of those.
It is a funny thing. Breath work isn't hard, but it's our oldest habit. So doing anything new can be a little funny, right? So we're going to do the same thing again, but this time when we blow it out, we're going to double the speed of inhale through our nose. We're really going to snort it, right? Okay, because when I was a professional fighter, my coach used to say, Tim, before you do a combination, do a big snort through your nose, and that sucks the air over your sinuses straight into your brain. Now, whether that worked in science or not, I don't know, but it worked in combat. So what we're going to do is we're going to exhale, and then we're going to pinch our fingers and snort as much as we can as we look up, like that. Cool, cool?
All right. Nobody look up my nose. Okay, go ahead.
You want to go off camera?
No, it's all good. Let's do this. Everybody,
Okay,
let's do this.
Have your power buttons ready. Just blow it out and shake it out. Blow it out, shake it out. Out, 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 out. Out, 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 out. And then rapid inhale through the nose. Look up, look up, look up, look up. Now, again, hold it and just wriggle and stretch. Wriggle and stretch. Wriggle and stretch. Relax everything and wriggle. And when you're ready, let out a really big sigh. Out, 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 out.
Interesting.
Just checking in, Carol Lee. How's your body feeling?
It actually feels pretty good. And okay, funny thing, I have sinuses. I mean, I live in the nursery capital of the world, is where I live. And so my allergies get really bad, especially when it rains. And with that, I think there might be something with that where it does go up over, and because I was able to breathe a little better when you're like opening that up, consciously opening.
Do you want to take that to the next level?
I don't know. I'm sure.
Okay. So there's a gas that our nose produces and our mouth does not produce. is called nitric oxide. It helps with physical performance, with physical recovery, boost your immune system, heart health, mood, brain function. If we went to the chemist and said, give me something that gives me all those benefits, you wouldn't get any change out of $500. But this nitric oxide is produced when we breathe through our nose. And the uptake of that is increased by 200% if we hum. Right?
Interesting. Okay.
Interesting. Well, humming is a sound, a frequency, a vibration. So it increases the uptake of this nitric oxide. So all we're going to do now, and I'm doing this exercise for people with sinus problems because this targets the eustachian tubes that go from your nose to your ears.
Right.
All right. So what it's going to look like is this. We're going to do that deep breath in where we're going to hold it. We're going to put one thumb over our nose and we're going to hum. And then we're going to gently restrict the air. We're not going to stop it. We're going to restrict the airway. And we hum through a restricted airway on that side. And you'll just give that a try, humming, and hum for as long as you can.
Okay.
Okay, I'll walk you through it. I'll be here the whole time. But if you can crack this, then I'd feel confident that you'd have something permanent post, this experience.
All right. You're doing this with me, right?
Absolutely. I'll walk you through it.
Okay, I'm following. Okay.
So blow it out, shake it out, blow it out, shake it out, out. And then rapid snort through the nose, look to the ceiling, pinch the power buttons. Okay, now hold it, put one thumb over one nostril, start humming and restrict it with the other finger. Restrict it. Keep restricting it. Now put your jaw forward. Push your jaw forward as you do this. Push your jaw forward and the hum will go further back. Humming as your jaw's forward. As long as you can. Keep going. Let that vibration go through it all. Did you stop it?
I'm sorry. Now I need a Kleenex after that.
Here. Take one from Australia.
Thank you very much. That's been wonderful. That's great. And some things that I'm definitely going to be working on and will most definitely need to be in continued contact because I think that there's a lot that you can help with for me as far as breathing through those stressful moments. And again, if anybody is interested, they can go out to your website and take a look there. And I think I don't know where I put you. Oh, wait, hang on. There it is. Okay. So yeah, a little bit of information that is there about you and their personal growth. Oh, the ice baths. Those are always fun.
And look, if people just going to go, you know what, I just want a good night's sleep tonight, take your phone out and just look up the Breathwork in Bed app. That will guide you to sleep. That will. I made the app to target people's golden windows, the 5 minutes going to sleep, 5 minutes waking up. And it's just basically just once you tell it when you want to sleep, when you want to wake up, you just tap the button when it falls out. Yeah.
Yeah. And you still have a 28-day free trial to that app?
Yep.
There you go. All righty. Well, again, I want to say a very huge thank you. It has been an honor and a privilege to have you on the channel. And I hope that we will be seeing each other again here and being in contact before too long. So again, thank you. And thank you to everyone who's come out today and joined us. And for those of you who will be listening on the pre-record. So Tim, if you want to hold tight for me, I am going to go ahead and wrap this up. So Thank you again, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you again next Sunday, 6 p.m. Central Time.
Hi, I'm Beaker with Military Broadcast Radio TV. We're your virtual MWR, bringing veterans radio, podcasts, gaming, animation, 3D printing, and a community that never leaves you behind. Download our Roku or mobile app today.
Wisdom to share if you listen this week, so pull up a chair and stay for a spell. We're heading down a trail where good stories dwell.